Hello everyone, welcome to another Fallout 76 guide. And today we're going to go over on how can you accomplish the weekly challenge in survival to get 150 crit hits. Let's get started. As you probably know, in survival mode, you have one unique challenge every week with legendary rewards. And this week you can get a very decent revolver, a 3-star one, which you'll be able to see at the end of this video. But before, you will need to land 150 crit hits on enemies, which are NPCs, not players. But to do this, it might take you some time and it requires strategy. So let's begin. Alright, so before you rush into a survival server, I highly advise you to prepare and organize your things beforehand in adventure mode. Why? Because you need quite some time to do this, and because when you first log in survival, it starts counting on your survival, and as you probably know, the longer you are alive, the higher are your chances to end up in top 3 and getting hunted by off the server. So make sure to do this in adventure to save some time, and I advise you to choose a high damage build and to get both melee and a ranged weapon, especially one that is not too strong so you are able to poke enemies and build more crit over time. If you don't have anyone to play with, I suggest you to get a solo wanderer because it gives you a lot of nice stats. And as you can see, I have a very peculiar build, and it's mostly a balance between damage and defense with some utility. But I know it's not for everyone, and it also depends on what perks you have, as well as armor and weapon. In the end, your adventure build will work here because you'll be killing NPCs and not players, so don't worry, just stick with it and let's move to the next step. Another thing that you should do in survival mode before you start your adventure in survival is to store everything that you don't want to lose. So as you know, when you die in survival, you lose part of your aid items and all your junk. So if you have space, of course, in your stash, make sure to store everything that is precious to you or you don't want to lose in this case, and keep only what you need, the essential, of course. Also, make sure to check my beginner guide on how to survive and thrive in survival mode, because I won't be repeating every strategic tip that I have included in there. So I highly advise you to check it as well for your own good and, well, to make sure you do this challenge as quickly as possible. As part of your preparation, you should prepare every piece of gear that is not too good in durability. Why? Because you will be out for a decent amount of time, and a fast travel is not really a thing in survival. So if you prepare everything now, you will have full or max durability on your gear and it won't break that easily. Even if you die or you get hit all the time, it will last at least 1-2 hours, which means armor breaking will be one less thing to worry about. It's very important to get enough food and supplies for at least 1-2 hours, and of course you can die in the meanwhile and lose all your supplies, but that's not what we are aiming for here. So make sure to get plenty of food and water, as well as some cams and maybe drinks, anything that could boost your stats and help surviving and dealing more damage to get things going faster. Okay, so now that we have all the essential and basic things solved, it's time to start thinking about what route are we going to take. For instance, my favorite one is here at the north of the mire. It's very far away from any station, and normally there aren't too many events around there for players to teleport. Here at the hash heap, it's also a decent location to go around and kill everything. There's plenty of enemies, and also the closest station is a bit to the north. It's not so close. You can also go to the north of the Toxic Valley because there are plenty of enemies to kill as well, and it's a relatively safe place to be, except the events that normally pop up there, but it's also a great choice. Now that you have everything in place, it's time to finally log out in a strategically location. So I would recommend it to be close to the start of your route, because in adventure you can freely teleport, and where you log out will be where you log in next. And trust me, this is a very handy trick. The first thing that you should do when you log in a survival server is to survey the player activity in that same server. Now, you can see these by opening your map and checking where are the top 3, for example. Also check your left corner to see if players are killing each other repeatedly. And if you feel there's a lot of activity near you or the route you want to take, just try to get in another server or simply go back to adventure to start a new route. The next step is to do the final preparations. Now I suggest you to sleep a little bit to get the well-rested bonus. A 5% experience bonus is always welcome, and play some music as well to get a more stamina regeneration, because you will be running a lot and that helps. Also, make sure you get enough stuff to cure diseases if you have any, review your perks as well, and organize your quick bar to ensure you have everything you need there. Probably, you know, your weapons and some cams and food, and that's it. As soon as you start your journey, make sure to do not stay in the same location for more than a few minutes. Why? Because especially if you are top 3, that gives you plenty of time and space for people to move and get to your position. So be on the move all the time, don't stay too long, even if there are a lot of enemies. Just make sure to be smart and don't stay too long. Also, if there are players in the area and they hear you shooting, they will approach. But if you keep moving, they will never find you at all. And if you are top 3, it makes it extremely difficult to catch up, since teleporting is not really a thing here. To build up crit, you need to enter your VATS mode and then hit. Alright, that's very simple and straightforward. But to trigger a crit hit, you need to enter space in PC. So make sure to always do this when your crit bar is full and ready to launch. You will get a sound notification when that happens, so be vigilant and pay attention to it. Otherwise, you will just be wasting time and crit hits in this case, which will slow down the entire challenge. A very efficient trick that I found is that spamming VATS will help you find enemies easily, especially those that are not hostile and are not so easy to spot in the wilderness, like wild animals. So make sure to spam it, and it will find enemies for you if there are any nearby. It's very, very handy and useful in general, but for this it's just wow, it's very, very good. As I had mentioned at the very start, you should use a low damage weapon, a ranged one, because this will allow you to poke enemies with your VATS, which creates an insane amount of crit. Because you don't want to instantly kill your enemies, you want to build crit, and that means you need to hit them repeatedly, and that's only possible if you have a low damage build and weapon. But you want to be safe as well, so if you encounter high level enemies, you want to be able to kill them fast enough as well. So that's why I suggested a strong build and then a weak weapon, so both scenarios are possible with your build. Capturing different workshops can be very adventurous for you due to several reasons. The first one is quite obvious, because you can get free teleports or auto travel points across the map. Now, as you can see, I captured around 6 workshops in this run, and I could simply go from the very north of the mire to the very south, and that gives me a huge advantage because I can simply escape other players if I see or think they are going to chase me down, especially when you are part of the top 3. And I can also visit locations easily. You know, I can travel a bit close to adventure mode. Okay, it's not exactly, but it's a bit close. Also, you will get regular events to defend your workshops with a decent amount of enemies and a nice experience, which can help you build even more crit. In order to do this challenge as quickly as possible, you should stay away from stations and events, mostly because everyone can easily teleport to the same points, and it can be very dangerous for you. Apart from losing items, it will slow you down, and that's not something you want, is it now? So make sure to stay on the border of the map or in remote locations that will keep you safe. If you decide to visit high-level locations, then there is a trick that you can use to build a lot of crit. Again, for this you will need a low-level weapon, and you should stay afar so you can deal a reduced amount of damage and still build crit, as you can see. In this case, the super mutant was missing a lot on me because of the metals in front of him, which was a great thing. But you can also do the same if you go to the top of buildings, where it's very safe. You can poke enemies from afar and they won't really be able to reach you, which is ideal for this type of a challenge. But please don't forget to trigger your crit whenever it's ready, because you can easily fill up your crit bar and then you might forget to trigger the crit itself, but it's just a reminder. Furthermore, another great strategy is to avoid damage while kiting your enemies. So stay afar as well as the last tip, but in this case you should focus on VAT hits, and as you well know, stamina runs low very quickly, and that also means you need to wait until it fills up again to do more VAT hits. In the meanwhile, just walk sideways to avoid as much damage as possible and wait for your VATS to be ready to strike another hit and build up your crit bar, because that's the goal here. We want to get as much crit as possible, and that requires patience. So don't just rush and kill everything with normal hits, unless you are dying, of course. But as I said, the best thing you can do here is to kite and avoid damage, and then you can do everything else I just pointed out. Another fantastic way to farm crit hits is by attending your workshop events, but only when it says retake the workshop, and you need to wait a while after the event just started. This because in survival people can actually travel to the event when it's in its normal state, and you don't want to face, you know, players in your workshops. It's like a war zone. So just go when it says retake, because then they won't be able to teleport or fast travel anymore. And yeah, there are usually waves of enemies and you can kill them one by one, build more crit, and slowly get to your objective, which is 150 crit hits. Now, this is a strategy for those who really hate to die in survival mode. So if that's the case and you are doing this challenge or anything else really, try to not be predictable, and this means that you shouldn't follow linear paths or roads, like always going forward or to the right or to the left. Make it a little different, okay? So if you are going forward 2 locations in a row, then try to go south this time or north, or then teleport to a workshop. And that's going to frustrate your opponents if they are chasing you, for example. Eventually, they will give up unless they have a lot of hate and really want to take you down. One of my final tips is to do not use power armor at all, especially when you are traveling between locations, because when you are out of the power armor, you can run much faster and use way less stamina to actually sprint. Besides that, you are quicker in your movements and you can fight much better. Of course, your defenses are lower, but it's quite a trade-off, really. I prefer to play like this, but it's up to you to decide what's best. However, don't forget that power armor will drastically slow you down and make things a bit more difficult to, well, complete your challenge. Last but not least, we have this tip, which is for when you get hunted by other players. If this happens, then make sure to respawn at your base or log out and try to get in another server. Why? Because stations are normally camped by players and fights often happen there as well. So if you spawn at the station, your chances to get killed again are quite high, I would say. Plus, if your server is highly populated and there's a lot of fights going on, it's best to simply try and get in another server. But that's my final advice to you. On the other hand, if you get killed by mobs, then, well, just respawn anywhere you want really, especially at your base, and don't forget to come back for your loot. If you follow the strategy tips in this guide, then you should have no issues in completing the weekly challenge to get 150 crit hits. It's not hard, it took me less than 2 hours to do this. I died a few times. One time I died to mobs. I killed myself with my shotgun. And another time a player killed me, which is okay and it happens. But overall, it's not difficult to do. You just need to have a route, to know what you're doing, and then things will become much, much easier. And here is the reward for this week, which is the medical malpractice, a 3-star revolver which can heal your teammates when you crit. It's pretty handy to have, it's a fun weapon, and it's a quite decent reward. At least it's better than last week's. And to finish this video, these are my results or stats after completing the challenge and roaming around a little bit. I got tons of experience, I did some events, but overall I was just aiming to get crits, and that's what I got, and gladly I could complete the event. I hope you enjoyed the content in this guide and that you will as well complete this weekly event. And that's going to be everything for today. I am Marta Branco. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed the content. I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!
Wow.